part, you can sign into ChatGPT, log in. What we're going to be doing is that we're going to do few items. First, we have a questionnaire. Sorry, we have a task, or we have a need, or we have a topic, or we have a kind of a research stuff we want to work on. The next thing we want to do is to use this to help us generate objectives. Then we also want to use this to generate questions in parts. We want to make sure that they're in parts. Then we want to use it to get maybe guidelines for analysis or our dashboard. Right? So we want to use this to achieve 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's get started. So the first task we're trying to work on is impacts of inflation okay, let me just say, I am a data analyst. And there's also what is called prompt engineering. Prompt engineering, when you're trying to use AI, so this is what we call generative AI. So we'll call it generative AI, where you input text and it gives you back text, or it gives you image, or it gives you different kind of things. So this is called generative AI. So you enter some input, and it's going to return some kind of responses, right? So it generates something and gives you an output. So you have input, you have output. So that's what they call generative AI. So in trying to use generative AI, you need to master the act of prompt engineering. So in prompt engineering, so this is a prompt. So I'm trying to enter a prompt here. I'm a data analyst, and I want to conduct a research on this and this and this. I will need you to give me suggestions on what the research topic or what the research work can be. So it's okay. So it's something you need to learn, you need to master. With time, you're not going to become very good. I'm a data analyst, and I want to conduct a research analysis on the impact of inflation to the standard of living in Nigeria, right? Don't forget, I said I was also going to talk about sample size. I will need suggestions on what the topic should be, objectives of this research work. I would love to develop a 15 questionnaire. I will also need guidelines for analyzing this data on Excel, which should include qualitative and quantitative analysis. So I've tried to summarize everything we've been learning all the while. So with this input, ChatGPT is going to now help us and get the responses. So I've just summarized everything I want to do at the different stages and see what it looks like. So later on, we're going to pick up our sample size, then we are going to progress. So it's giving us, I hope everybody, you can see my screen very well. Everybody, hope you can see my screen. So you see, it suggested assessing the impact of inflation on the standard of living in Nigeria, a mixed method analysis. So there's what we call a mixed method. A mixed method analysis is when you are doing both qualitative and quantitative, or when you're using different types of analysis. You use bar charts, pie charts, and you also describe or explain what is going in there. That's what you call a mixed method analysis. Then objective of the research: examine the trend of inflation in Nigeria over a specific period of time, 10 years. Analyze the impact of, so what it means is that I'm already understanding as a data analyst. Oh, sorry. What did I do? Goodness gracious. So what it means is that when I am trying to run this analysis for the very first one, I'm talking about these objectives. When I am working on this analysis, what it means is that I'm going to collect inflation data for, let's say, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, like that, up to 2024. Then I will now have the inflation rate, let's say 3%, 4%, 5%, 2%, 3%, 8%. When I now do a line graph, I will now have something like this. So you see now, it is helping us to get what the objectives of the research work can be. So that's this very first one here. The second part is analyze the impact of inflation on purchasing power and cost of living. So it's going to check maybe salaries of people and, of course, what the inflation rate is going to be. Investigate the relationship between inflation and access to basic amenities. What it means is that we're going to be collecting data based on healthcare, education, transport, and salaries. Then coping strategies. So how are you coping? How are you managing inflationary pressures caused by high cost of goods, services, and the rest? Then policy recommendation. Because you see, as a data analyst, when you're doing your analysis, either at work or research work, academics or whatever, you don't just do analysis. You must be able to profile a solution. Okay, so let's move on to the next part. So it is suggesting to us 15 questions, right? So the 15 questions suggesting to us is that, okay, one, what is your age group? Now, if you check very well, these guys have done excellently well. Why? It has differentiated this research work or this questionnaire by sections: demography, inflation perceptions, impact, coping strategies. If you check very well, you're going to see that these are the objectives. So if you have a problem to solve as a data analyst, the first thing you're going to ask yourself is that, what are you looking out for? That's the objectives. The next thing is that, how are you going to collect that data to make sure that it attends to these particular objectives? Right? So what is your age group? So because we are going to be asking this to adults, that's why we are having age 18 to 25. You're going to find that from the questionnaire guide I'm going to give to you that you must have responses that are mutually exclusive. So something like this: response A, response B, response C, response D. If you say 18 to 25 and 25 to 20 to 35, this is wrong. Why? If I pick here as my response and I pick here as my response, it is the same thing. Because if I am 19 years old, my answer is both A and my answer is both B. Why? 19 is in A, is in 18 to 25. 19 is in B also, because 25 to 35 is inside 18 to 25. So if you say 25 to 35, what you mean, you are doing something like this. So this is going to be 18 to 24. This is 25. This is 26 to 35. Right? So you have issues here. So always just make sure that If you end in 25, continue from 26. If you end in 35, continue from 36. If you end in 45, continue in 46. If you end in 55, continue in 56. Then you can say and above. Another thing is to make sure that you cover all possible responses. Right? Cover all possible responses. So with this, we can say that we are taking care of everybody. Then the next part is, what is your age income monthly? Now, in Nigeria, our salary is in, if they say, what is you got a job, what's your salary? Your employment letter most of the times is going to state your monthly salary. Rarely, at times, you can have it also state your yearly salary. In the US and in the UK and in most developed world, when people talk about salary, if they tell you their salary is $100,000, what it means is that they are collecting this divided by 12 minus tax and other deductions. So their salaries are always per year. But here, in most African countries and in some part of the world, the salary is always monthly. So you must indicate. It's just like when you ask somebody that how much fuel do you spend per year? That's a very wrong question to ask. Or you ask somebody, so you call that ambiguous questions. So don't ask ambiguous questions. Ask very specific and clear questions. So you should be asking the person, how much fuel do you spend per day? So you should say per day. So when the person gets this data, and it is, let's say, 2,000 naira per day or £2, what you should not do as a data analyst, if you have this as a column, if you have this as salary per month, you have fuel consumption per day. If your goal is to check per year, you can just say this column times 12. If this is C5, you can just say C5 times 12. If this is D5, you can just say D5. You can do another column and say D5 times 12. So you, as a data analyst, you have to compute this and compute this yourself. So, but you must make sure that when you're asking the question, it is very straightforward, it's very clear, right? So that's this. The next question is, what is the impact? What is the highest level of education? So you have primary, secondary, tertiary, postgraduate. This one covers everybody. Then you see inflation perception. On a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate the increase in the cost of living over the past 3 years? Which categories have you most been affected by inflation in your experience? So choose all that apply. So this kind of responses you have, it's called multi-choice. So somebody will be able to, so if we're doing this form now, we should be able to have something like a multi-tick, right? We can multi-tick. A person can indicate one or more. Then you have, then make sure that you cover all the areas possible. Impact of standard of living. So how has inflation affected your inability to afford? So you have quite a lot of all of these things already covered. So you see coping strategies. So at the end of the day, you have 15 questions. So you can look at it. You can research other questionnaires. You can research other analysis, other research work, and see if your questionnaire covers all the different aspects. Okay, going forward, we're also going to look at guidelines. So how should you do this particular analysis on Excel or Power BI? So data entry. So organize all the responses into Excel for each question. So if you are using Google Form, like we're going to be using in the next 30, 40 minutes, we're going to be using Google Form to create this. If we use Google Forms to create this, Google Form gives us an ability to be able to have an Excel sheet at the end of the day. Once we export this Excel sheet, we can bring it to our software and we can now commence our analysis. So it's giving us a guideline now, and it's saying we can do data entry or we can export that, and we can assign numeric values to scale-based questions. So you see this type of questions: never, rarely, sometimes, frequently. So you call them skill-based questions. So you can convert them to 1, 2, 3, 5 so that when Excel is analyzing it, it makes it very, very straightforward. Another thing that can be used to analyze it is also SPSS, because SPSS is very good for research-based kind of data analysis. Then for descriptive analysis, it's telling us that we can also do Excel functions such as average, we looked at it earlier on, median, standard deviation, to analyze the measure of central tendencies. I spoke about this in the previous class. Then we can also do frequencies, right? These are all EDAs. We can do frequencies, right? And check age groups and income range. Then for visualization, we can do bar charts. We can do categorical. We can do number of respondents in different income groups. So we can check something like the different income group is, let's say, 50,000 to 120,000, 121,000 to 130,000, like that. So we can do a bar chart to now have, let's say, 10 people, 20 people, 50 people, 100 people, like that. So we can do a bar chart that tells us something like this. So that cannot tell us that, oh, more people earn this particular amount. So that's the bar chart. There's a pie chart, distribution of responses to key questions. So categories most affected by inflation. So we can do something like this. So this is, let's say, foodstuff. This is housing. This is other items. So if we do a pie chart for category-based kind of stuff, it's going to work for us. So it's giving us a guideline on how we can go ahead from here. Then another one is a line chart, show trends over time. So you can show inflation over several years. I already talked about that. We can have something like this from 2000 to the 2000, 2001, 2002, 2000, like that, up to 2024. Then we can now have 3%, 5%, 10%, 8% inflation. So we can have something like this. So this is what you call a line chart, right? So also you have correlation. So there's a function called correlation, just like you have average, you have sum, to check the relationship between income level versus impact of inflation on saving. So let me talk a little bit about correlation. You see, anytime we talk about correlation, we're talking about relationship between two things. Now, if I have income and I have inflation, and I have a chart that goes like this, question is, what does it mean? If I have income and I have inflation and I have a chart that goes like this, what does it mean? If I have income and I have inflation and I have a chart that is just everywhere, right? For this one, maybe the points, when I plotted it, they looked like this. This one, when I plotted it, it looked like this. You can actually draw a line with how the stuff goes. You can draw a line on how. So this one is just everywhere. What does it mean? Here you have a positive relationship. Here you have a negative, sorry, you have a negative relationship. Here you have no relationship. Let me explain. If you say as the income is increasing from 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, the inflation is increasing. It then means at 10, 5, 10, 15, 20. At 10, we have this. At 20, we have it increased. At 30, we have it increased. At 50, we have it also increased. So if you plot it, it goes like this. It then means as income is increasing, inflation is increasing. That means there's a positive relationship. In this case, as income is increasing, inflation is what? Decreasing. That means it's negative correlation. Now, if income and inflation have no relationship, your chart is going to look like something like this. So when we plot it, we're going to see. So if you draw a line chart for anything and it goes like this, or it goes like this, it then means you have a relationship between those two guys. What it also means is that you can forecast this item based on this item. So that's just about correlation. So we have a positive correlation when one item is increasing, the other item is increasing. We have a negative relationship when one item is increasing and the other item is reducing. Then we have no relationship or no correlation when whether this item is increasing or this item is increasing, it doesn't count on how the graph is to go. Okay. So you see, if we get the correlation chart, we can now better tell if there's a relationship between inflation and income level. Okay, then you now also have some qualitative analysis. For the person that asked me a question on the open-ended question, what can you do? Things like, if any of your questions allow open-ended questions, suggest policy measures, group similar responses into categories or into themes. So you can say, okay, 30 people are saying we should do this, 10% are saying we should do this, 5% says we should do this. So that way you have analyzed that particular response. Count how often each team appears, right? So you can use a bubble chart for that. We're going to do that in Power BI. Sentiment analysis, you can classify responses based on positive, neutral, or negative towards inflation, right? You can also do a pivot table. Use pivot tables to summarize and explore relationship between different factors. So we've already done pivot tables. So this is the time we're not going to be applying all of this. So this is like a summary of everything we've looked at in the session. The next thing we're going to be doing is that we're going to fix this stuff into Google Form. Then we will share it. Everybody will fill it. We will also share it to other persons. Midweek or next week, we're not going to use Excel and we're going to use Power BI and we'll now start doing some analysis. Okay, so welcome from the break. So what we're going to be doing now is we already have the questionnaire, which is this. Then we will also now try to go to Google Forms. So just go to forms.google.com, right? You make sure that you have a Google account. If you're not signed in, to ask you to sign in, you sign in, then you click on blank form. So this is a very blank form. Now, for standards, one thing you want to do is to make sure that you have an introduction. So I need an introduction for this questionnaire so that I have more response rates. And so respondents can fill the form. Just like a teaser and guide on how to also fill the form, right? So we've used this also to kind of get an intro, which I talked what I talked to you about, so that it can increase your chances of people providing accurate data. So anytime you're going to be doing your research work, you're going to be analyzing data, and you're starting from the beginning, this is very crucial. So I'm just going to copy all of this. I could tweak it, I could change it, I could make adjustment to it, but just to keep it very simple. So I'm going to have this as the form description. I'm going to call this, I'm going to call this assessing the impact, right? So this is going to be questionnaire. And the questionnaire is what? Assessing the impact of inflation on the standard of living in Nigeria. So a mixed method analysis, I wouldn't need this because this is not for the user, right? So dear respondents, you are invited to participate in a short survey on the impact of inflation and standard of living in Nigeria. The survey is part of a research study aimed at understanding how inflation affects households and individuals like you, and how people are adapting to rising prices. Your insights are valuable and will contribute to a better understanding of the challenges Nigeria faces in these difficult times. The information gathered will be used to provide recommendations to policymakers and stakeholders with the goal of improving the quality of life for all. The survey will be approximately 5 to 7 minutes to complete. There are 15 questions divided into sections. You see this part, like I said earlier on, please answer honestly based on your personal experience. Your responses are completely anonymous and will be kept confidential. The questions, for questions with multiple choice answers, please select the option that best describes your situation. Some questions may ask you to rate your experience on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. Thanks for your time and valuable contribution. Your participation will go a long way in helping us. So you see, this introduction helps a lot. Victor Chidi Oruka, youtube.com/Victor Chidi. Right? So with this, you're going to have better chances of responding. Okay, so let's get to work. First question is what? What's your age group? So just copy that, paste here. Now we have answers. So the very first one is 18 to, so I'm going to divide my screen using Windows left. I'm going to put this on the right, and I'm going to put, I'm going to bring this guy out, put this guy to the left, have this left, and I'm going to have this right. So that I don't need to be tapping the screens. So what's your age group? So is this multiple choice? No, this is a checkbox. So you just want them to pick only one answer. So it can be checkbox or drop down. So I will tap, paste. So copy, sorry. Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. It's in above. So that's all for this. So you can use checkbox. For checkbox, they might be able to have multiple. You have settings for this actually. We'll talk about the settings later on. Or you can just keep it as drop down so that they will just pick only one. So once you're done, ordinarily your screen will be like this. Once you're done with this particular one, you can tap on this guy to have next question, right? So tap on this next question. So I'll collapse it back with my Windows right arrow on your keyboard. So what's your income range? So below this, multiple choice, no drop down. First one, second one, third one, and above 200, right? You can mark them as required if you want them to answer all the questions, right? Except for some questions that are not necessary, right? So it would be good you mark them as compulsory so that you ensure that anybody that starts the form fills the entire form. Still drop down, so we can have primary, we can have secondary, we can have tertiary, we can have postgraduates, right? Next question. So you see, you have some description before some, what's it called? Before the next part. So you see this first part, 15 questionnaire grouped into several sections. So this part is called demographics. So I could go up and you see this part and insert a section. So you see section, right? Section. So you see this is section 1 of 1. You see section 1 of 1 started from here. Let me see if I can add a section here. So it's not adding. Let me undo and let me add the session. So I don't know why a session is not adding in. I'll sort that out later on. So, but this is section 2. So section 2 is this part. So I can put the description here and I can call it instead of saying section 2, I just say inflation perception. So I will edit this part and say on a scale of this, whatever, whatever, then I can start filling the question. So this section 2. So the first part is going to be section 1, right? Which is demography. Then this section 2. Then this is a question. You could drag a question under another question, right? You could drag. So this is, sorry, all of these are under section 1. So let's assume this is section 2. Sorry, I'm coming. This part, primary education, is section 1. So I will drag this particular question into section 1. Same thing with this income is section 1. I will drag it into section 1, right? So we now have section 2, no question. So we go over to this place. Okay, this is actually a question on a scale of 1 to 5. So this is a question. So I will just cut this and put this as my question. Then my responses are choose all that apply. So multiple choice question, checkbox is fine. So I will just have this as option, have this as option, have this as option, have this as option, have this as option. So you have section 1 that have what's your age group, which is demography, this and this. Then you have section 2 that is inflation perception. So we can just say here we want to gauge or get perception with respect to inflation in the Nigerian economy, right? So this is the description. So this is the next question. So another question, impact of standard of living. I think this is another section, or will it be? Okay, this is question 6. Okay, you have another section called impact of living. So you have multiple sections. So I will just ignore the section so that I just have the questions. But when you're doing yours, you can ensure that you have them in sections, right? So I will have how this. Then I have no effect. This should be dropped down. Then I have minor effect. Then I have significant impact. Of course, quite a lot of people are going to say significant impact. So I want to have this. Okay, so after this, so you make sure you tap here then before you say next question so that it comes under. That's what happened earlier on. Have you experienced this? Drop down. So we say yes. We say no. Once I'm done, if you have questions, you can do well to ask. I keep it required. I make sure I tap here. I click on next question. How often do you find yourself? Then multiple choice, drop down. Never. When you go through the questionnaire design, you're going to see some standard as it regards, you call this Likert scale or skill-based kind of responses. So there are some standards to it. Or if you want to know how to create your standard, let's say Likert scale guide. So you have something like this. So this is the one I normally tell students to use very often. So I'll drop this image in the group. So anytime you're trying to look out for satisfaction, you can use very dissatisfied, dissatisfied, neither dissatisfied, satisfied, very satisfied. So it goes from 1 to 5, or you can invert it. You have, anytime you're looking at likelihood, anytime you're trying to look at likelihood, you can say very unlikely, unlikely, neutral, likely, very likely. So this ensures that you have the balance at the middle, then you have 2 to the other side and 2 to the other side. So anytime you're having question scale, you cannot have 2, and you should reduce your yes or no kind of responses. Your responses should just be, if you want to have yes or no responses, you should not be more than 1 or 2 in your entire questionnaire if it's up to 15 or 20. So you should not be having all your responses yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. So that's not the standard way to create questionnaires when you're going to be running analysis, right? So you want to have scales. So you have 5-point scale, 7-point scale. You should really not have 3-point scale. The standard is 5 or 7. So if you have 5, a middle ground will be the third answer, right? If you have 7, the middle point is going to be the fourth answer, right? So you have importance. So how important, or what do you think is the importance of increased salaries or government intervention on inflation, whatever? So you see very, very unimportant, unimportant, neutral, important, very important. So you have some kind of balance. So I'm going to drop this in the training room. So let's try it on. So you see this three response now. So this is not very standard, right? So this thing we're giving is not so standard. So when you're doing your own, make sure it is either a 5 or a 7. It's more or less more appropriate because you're going to cover your responses to the left and also to the right, and you have some kind of middle ground in terms of your response. So I'll add another one. Let's say, okay, so you see, there's a question 8, there's a question 9, but there is no responses. So I can say, please, there is no responses for question 9. Right? So we should go to have the correct answer. So how has inflation affected your savings or investment plan? So next one. That's question 9. That is this one, right? So we just go back and pick. So while generating, it skipped it. So drop down. So we'll go to question 10. So how will we be affected by inflation? So reduced non-essential spending. So make this a drop down also. Substituted expensive items for this, taking an additional income, right? So make it required. The next question is, what strategies do you hope it right to increase pricing? So you can say it's also drop down. Budgeting, seeking alternative source of income. They're reducing consumption. Okay, so I make this required. You can add the next one. Then have you noticed? So this is an open-ended question. So one, I drop this. I cannot say, okay, this is going to be a short answer or a paragraph. So you see, the person will have opportunity to fill up questions. So you have a 13, a 14, a 15. So I'll just pause here So we can now go ahead to properly configure this form. Okay. So right now we have our questionnaire completed. So you have section 1 of 2. So we can add a section here. So this introduction is the section 1 of 2. We might put another section here, right? So you can add a section. So this is if you want to embed a video. Let's say you want to embed a video to do some explanation or do something. If you want to add a picture, if you want to add a text description, let's say between, so you can just say something like this. So this is a text description for, let's say, part 1. If you don't want to make it sessions, part 1. And you can put a description before this particular item, right? So that's that for that. If you want to add a question, if you want to export all of these questions, if you want to add a section, I've already explained this. Then the title of the form, it can be this same stuff you have here. That is this same guy, this stuff, or you can type in anything you want to type in here. It's going to be saved. And one thing you should understand is that the questionnaire gets saved automatically as you are working on it. So if you leave this system here or shut down, by the time you come in, you're able to write down with the questionnaire. So I have this already done, right? So the next thing for me is to do some more additional configuration. So one thing you want to do, you want to ensure that somehow the questions are required, right? If the sessions are required, it can help make sure people fill the form and then just skip and skip and skip. The type of question, if you want to delete or remove an answer, you can tap. If you want to add, you just add, right? If you want to drag, you can drag the responses, right? You can drag the responses. You're going to see these 6 items here. Now, you can also configure description, or you can shuffle, you can do all of that. That's possible here, right? And you can indicate whether it's required. You can also duplicate a question, right? See, I have this again. You can duplicate and just change the values, or you can also delete. I don't want it. So once you're done entering the entire data set, data questions in the questionnaire, the next thing you want to configure is responses. You see, this is where we're going to. We can actually, our responses, we can have it in Excel sheet. We can import it and now do analysis. Don't forget, we said earlier on that when we get data, we might need to do some cleaning, some adjustments, and all of that. So this is when you're going to learn how to actually work on search for a primary data set. So anytime you don't want to receive responses from this, you can also toggle between accepting response and not accepting response. If I share this link for this questionnaire to you now, you will not be able to fill it. You're going to be told this questionnaire no longer accepts responses. So if you toggle it on, you're able to do that. Then the next thing you want to do is settings. So you can make it a quiz. If you want to make it a quiz, what happens is that you can now award marks to it. So we're not interested in that. So you can say how responses is going to be collected. You see, somebody asked a question about email address and all of that. So you can say, okay, don't collect email address. You can say collect email address. If you say collect email address, it then means the person have to be signed in before the person can fill the form. So I say do not collect. Allow response editing. Do you want to be able to edit their responses after they have submitted? So once they fill the form, after some time or some days or some minutes, if they go back to the form, they will to edit their response. If you want to allow that, fine. If you don't want to allow that, you can uncheck that. You also can limit to only one response. So if you want to limit to only one response, people must sign in. So it must collect their Gmail so that you don't have duplicate responses. So if you don't want to collect the emails, you can untick this and see how to now sort and clean up your data set before you can write on, which is part of the things you want to learn as a data analyst. A presentation, at the end of the form, what do you want the person to see? You can also say, I want to show progress bar, I want to shuffle. You can say, okay, your response I've recorded. You can say, okay, thanks for filling the questionnaire. Thanks for filling the questionnaire. I'm very grateful for your response. Victor C.O. Right? So this is what the person is going to see after that response. If you need to send the person a link, kindly check up the website. Right? So if you need to take the person to another link or whatever, you can fill all of that. That's going to be after submission. So you find that in settings. So you save it. So when you fill the form, that's what you're going to see. View summary, show link to submit another response. No. So you don't want the person to fill, after filling the first one, the person fills again. You don't want all of that. Form default, so nothing much here. Collect email address, don't collect, and all of that. So I think that's all with configuring your questionnaire. The next thing you want to do is responses, link to sheet. So if I tap on this sheet, it's going to ask me, do I want to create a new sheet or do I want to select an existing sheet? I'll say, no, I want to create a new sheet, and I hover to this place and I can click on create. Once I click on create, it's going to create an Excel sheet. This Excel sheet is a sheet that is going to have all my data. Then I can now import into Excel and I can now write down with my data analysis. Okay, I'm going to go back to this place and I'm going to click on question. There are a few things you could do. So if you hover around this area, you're going to see customize theme. So you can tap on it and say, okay, I want the font to be Arial, right? I want this font to be Arial also, or Georgia, and all of that. You could do all of those normal things you do in Microsoft Word. You can say, I want my color scheme to be this. I want to choose a header image. So you do that in customized theme. Let me look for data analytics, banner. So let me pick a banner. So opening a new tab. Oh, this is too small. Okay, this looks nice. So let's say you have done some graphics, or the team have done some graphics, or the graphic designers have done some graphics. So you can have that image. What you can do is that you can upload the image here. So let me start afresh. This is the form. You go to customize theme. You go to header, you choose image. You upload a new image. You can choose from different themes, right? You can choose from all of these, right? Right. If I insert, see, it's going to change everything, right? And change the color scheme. But if I upload my own, so I want, go to downloads, this is the image. So I can have my own image. And say done. Right. So you see, it's going to fix the image and have a kind of color scheme. If I want a darker background, anything I want, I could have here. Right? So that's all. The last thing you want to do is you can preview how it's going to look like. So this is what our questionnaire is going to look like. So I'm going to drop this in the form. So this is section 1. You see, required, you have to fill it. If you don't fill it, it cannot allow you. So I need to also ensure that these other parts are also required. This is required. This is required. This is required. This is required. So you can ensure that you indicate that all of these are required, right? So if I refresh this also, I'm also going to see that they are all now required. So another thing you want to do is that you can send, click on send, you can send this to one email, just one person's email, a message, include the form, and you send. Or You can generate a link. You can shorten it. You see this link? This is the link you are now going to be able to send to people and tell them to fill. Then you see this if you want to actually embed it on a website for those of us that build websites or web developers. So we're going to use this for short, this URL. I will copy this and I'm going to paste this in the group. Okay, so you're going to find out that once you have persons, they start filling the form. Anytime you log into this form, so let me just go off everything and just go to forms.google.com. Then you're going to see all the forms that you've ever created. So this is our most recent form. I'll tap on it. I'm going to see how many persons have actually responded. I can tap on it. I can now view sheet. I can also see some preliminary analysis being done for me. Right?
Based on the questionnaire.
Yeah, based on the questionnaire already. So you can see that if I also want to do my own analysis, my own way, maybe using my own tool, I can now click on view sheet. Once I view sheet, I'm going to see everything. And if I intend to collaborate with other persons in my team, this is an Excel sheet or this is a Google sheet, I could just tap on share and say, okay, I'm inviting Victor and I want him to be an editor. If I intend for him to also download or edit or work on this data set and clean it up right here, I can make him an editor. If I want him to just only view, then if I share this link to him, he will just be able to see what we're working on. If I make him a commenter, that means he can just insert comments to different sections of the work, maybe work on this, please, why do we have this, and all of that. So I want to make him an editor and then add a message for him. I tell him, okay, please, this research work we're working on, Victor is going to be in charge of questionnaire development and creation, which we've done. Maxwell is going to be in charge of data cleaning, which we're going to do next week after we've gotten up to 50 to 100 responses. Rebecca is going to be in charge of data visualization. Then Simon is going to do the final presentation with some qualitative analysis. So we're going to be doing the analysis on Excel and Power BI. So we might do all of this in Power BI. So please acknowledge when you get it. So if I send this person will be able to actually see this stuff when I share this link. So you see our responses have started coming in.